Welcome to Think Bigger Voices, hosted by Jennie Treby and co-produced by Tony DiBenedetto. We're on a mission to break the cycle of poverty for kids in America by inspiring education, advocacy, and action in our communities. We'll tackle big subjects, talk to the experts, and promote the solutions making an impact. Join us if you believe that every kid deserves the opportunity to think bigger.
Welcome to Think Bigger Voices. I'm Jennie Treby. We have a special episode today celebrating our 1-year anniversary. And with me is our original guest, Mr. Tony DiBenedetto, who is also the visionary behind the podcast and the founder of Think Big for Kids. Welcome back.
Thanks, Jennie. I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's been a great year.
It's been a really great year.
Yeah.
Before we get into our conversation, I think it's important for us to go back to our first episode. I want to show just a really quick clip where I ask you, what is the podcast and what do we want to get out of it?
Well, the idea behind Think Bigger Voices is really kind of educational in nature. In the, 30 or so years that I've been giving back in the community and talking about this topic, I realize there's just a lot of misconceptions about poverty, about kids in poverty, about how it happens, how it gets solved. And through Think Big for Kids, I've gotten really close to donors and volunteers and certainly the families and kids of poverty. And I thought it was just time to spend some of our resources to really educate the general public, right? Bring really smart people to the table on all aspects of poverty so that we're all a little bit more aware of it. And maybe we can all lend our treasures and resources to solving it.
Okay, great. So we've had, Tony, looking back, we've recorded 24 episodes. We've recorded here in Tampa Bay, where kind of our home studio is. We've recorded in Atlanta and also the greater Washington, D.C. region. Those are areas where Think Big has programming. We have talked to numerous nonprofit executives, business leaders, community advocates. It's a lot of content.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the key takeaways?
For me, there's 4 or 5 big things that come to mind. One of the biggest thing is, people really care. One of the concerns I've had over the years is do people care about other people's financial situation? The fact that kids are born into poverty. And depending on who I've talked to, I've got different, feelings coming out of that. But after doing this for a year and talking to all the guests that we've had on and listening to the podcast, you do walk away saying there's a lot of different organizations that care, that there's other people that have some unfair disadvantages that don't allow them to make enough money to live on. And that's a powerful takeaway for me and motivating for me for Think Big for Kids, for the podcast and other things that we need to do to create awareness about what's going on in the U.S. So I really walked away with a sense of maybe it's a humbling feeling because I thought maybe people didn't care and they really do. And so I was glad I was kind of educated on that, which is one of the main points of the whole podcast and the why that we've talked about last year is how do we educate people on what our kids are going through, what opportunities they have or don't have, how difficult, that is to overcome. So I think that one big one is really walking away after a year and say people care. The second big one for me is the impact that they're having. When you think about, I think about the closet, and I think about
Tracy's closet.
Yeah, Tracy's closet.
The minute they feel that you're judging them, they won't come back. And then they're back to square one. Mm-hmm. And I think especially high school students, that's a weird time physically and certainly emotionally. Mm-hmm. Some of them are kind of coming into their own spirituality, and you want them to know that they have a safe place. And I give out my phone number very freely. I've had it for 35 years. And that way, if they need something, they can text me.
And do they?
Oh, yes. And sometimes the kids that come in, they just need those things that are in the closet, or they need a folder for school.
And I think about how kids rely on Tracy in that closet for just some of the basic needs that we all take for granted, like deodorant or toilet paper or, whatever it is to get through the day. And sometimes we lose track of, when we say somebody's in poverty, do we really understand how it impacts every aspect of their lives and what the limitations are. So I thought, the impact that Tracy had was really amazing.
Well, and just the fact that it's somebody who saw a problem.
Right.
And, she actually started off with doing prom dresses for kids and quickly realized that prom dresses are great, but these kids need the basics. And the fact that she built something out of that. And to your point about people caring, the fact that she's got hundreds of alumni every year who come back and give back to that closet.
Oh, I love that.
That's really cool.
Yeah, because it has a legacy, right? It's almost like it's its own endowment and it's feeding itself, which is awesome, which is probably a segue into another super impactful organization is the folks at Feeding America. Specifically, we talked to Thomas at Feeding Tampa Bay.
So the way that our organization is moving is we are pivoting towards saying, okay, let's think about it from a for-profit lens. Mm-hmm. We have a huge customer base that has a wider variety of needs. How do we provide more services and resources? So the way that our world is shifting, and as I said, when you think about what our vision is, we want to build healthy communities today and for generations to come, right? So we want to connect, convene, build out services where when someone comes in for food, they walk out with food, but they also walk out with access to a wider variety of things.
It was ironic that I think we all thought, wow, what a powerful organization, the impact they're having. And I think we went into it thinking they feed people at their lowest point and they're a safety net. But I think we both walked away thinking, oh, they're in the prevention business. They're trying to prevent people to get to the state of food insecurity. And obviously Thomas was an amazing guest. We had a hard time getting his cut down to 30 minutes. I think we had an hour of Thomas. And then ironically, we were hit with a pretty major catastrophe in Tampa. And we got to see Thomas and the team feeding Tampa Bay in kind of a natural disaster state, emergency state. Like if you look at what happened at the hurricanes, if you look at what happened with SNAP and the government shutdown, they were ready to go. And they were there to help those folks immediately, which we all needed for those people, even just to get through it was almost 2 months of the government shutdown.
Yeah. No, I found it. I had taken some notes. With the government shutdown, they distributed 200,000 more meals a week.
Just in the Tampa Bay area.
Just in Tampa Bay, on top of the regular average of 1.9 million meals.
Wow. Thank
That's
God.
pretty incredible.
Yeah. And that's it just gets back to the massive impact of Feeding America, Feeding Tampa Bay, and what Thomas and the team are doing here locally. I feel a sense of gratitude about knowing there's so many different types of organizations, right? You have Kelly in Atlanta, Kelly and her partner in
Kelly
Atlanta.
AJ Stewart.
CJ.
And I'll also add and Kelly can definitely unpack our Know Your Truth sessions. I believe that education is learning what you need to learn to do what you need to do. So we really work hard to make sure that our boys and girls understand what they need to be doing in life.
And what they're doing in Atlanta, which they're taking a sports approach, like what you can see is they're all helping in small ways, right? And somebody's helping with food, somebody's helping with financial aid, somebody's helping with education, somebody's helping with the closet, with personal needs. And so you realize it takes all of these different, you said we interviewed 24 guests. They were all completely different. And that's not even all the different services that people in poverty need.
No, we've only just scratched the surface.
I know. So when you look at that ability that each one of them and the role they play, my takeaway was we need these groups to continue to look for ways to partner.
Like with Effie Santos and Maddie's movement, we interviewed her. She is helping kids who are aging out of foster care.
Right.
Most of our teens and young adults that we work with have been in foster care most of their life. We have some of them that have moved 40, 55 times by the age of 18. So you can imagine that lack of consistency, the lack of support, people changing over, along with trauma. And I always say, none of these kids, not one, asked to be in the foster care system. So there's a lot of layers to unpack there.
And then upon talking to her, wow, her kids need all the services that Think Big for Kids provides.
So it's a
natural partnership.
Yeah.
And so it's that collaboration piece where I think if we can kind of, bring down the barriers between we do this, they do that, there's room for everybody. And we need everybody. We need everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe my last takeaway or fourth takeaway that pops in my head was the conversation we had with Jessica at United Way of the Tampa Bay area.
United Way Suncoast serves 5 counties here in West Central Florida: Hillsborough, Pinellas, Sarasota, Manatee, and DeSoto. And our mission is to mobilize our community to action to give people the freedom to rise. And what we mean by that is that we're serving our ALICE families. And that's a research report that we put out every 2 years. It's an acronym that stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. These are individuals and families who are working every single day, but not earning enough to be able to afford a basic household budget. This is people that are above the federal poverty line, but again, not able to make ends meet.
And, we talk about poverty in light of, the federal guidelines, and $30,000 for a family of 4 is where, poverty starts. So if you're making $31,000 or $32,000, somehow you're not in poverty. And, anybody out there that's listening to the podcast realizes that those numbers are, terribly low. They don't really factor in all the aspects of what it takes to actually function in America. And when you look at that data, so if you look at the poverty level, there's about, 13% of the country's in poverty, which is a giant number. But when you look at the ALICE data, what you realize is 40% of Americans can't meet the basic needs, basic electric, food, a roof over your head, education, all the basics. When you add all that up, it's much higher than the federal poverty line. They do it by city. And so we've adopted that. And I know other non-for-profits are using the ALICE data, which is
more realistic.
It's more realistic. Yeah. And the nice thing is United Way sharing that data publicly. It's public information because they want everybody to understand there's a lot more to trying to make ends meet per se than what the federal poverty line. Yeah. And I think using that data to not just create awareness with people donating, but it's also creating awareness in the government and these agencies that we all need to collectively do more, because even the safety nets that are out there that are federally or state funded are not even close to enough to get by. And so that's why the programs that we're highlighting on the show are so important.
Right. Yeah.
That was a great takeaway.
It was really cool.
Did anything how did you feel about the year? I know this was our brainchild. You say it was my idea or vision, but really it was our idea. How did you feel at the end?
I feel so humbled, and I feel so energized by it. Awesome. I just think that there are, like you said, so many people doing so many good things for kids that it gives you a lot of hope. And then, of course, when you pair that with our work at Think Big for Kids, when you're actually getting to know these kids and getting to know what their plans are for the future and seeing them get scholarships and seeing that they're going to break the cycle of poverty, it's deeply humbling, and it just makes you grateful, and it just makes you want to get out and do more. And I think leaning back into what you said earlier, people are good. They want to do things. They just need to be educated. And I know I learned something new every episode. Yeah. And I think a lot of people learned. That's the feedback that I got. And I think you got too, is that people were like, hey, I didn't know. I didn't know this. You mentioned Kelly and CJ Stewart in Atlanta, that if you're born into poverty in Atlanta, you have a less than 4% chance of making it out.
Yeah.
And in their analogy, because they're baseball people, they're doing youth-based sports development. I think that's right. CJ will say you have an equal chance of getting into the major leagues as you do making out of poverty.
Yeah. Well, that just tells you how overwhelming the obstacles are, for sure.
Yeah.
Back to your other point, the other thing you just reminded me of a takeaway, or maybe highlighted it, is a lot of the people that are involved in running those organizations and the volunteers at those different places, there's a personal connection. So I'm hoping one of the things that we become proud of is that we can highlight some of these great charities and non-for-profits that people go, that's the kind of organization I want to help. and they get involved and they volunteer, because most of the time people will volunteer for things that are personal to them. You know, like if somebody's sick with a certain thing, that certain thing motivates them to do something about it. Or if they've had their own childhood experience or they've lived in a certain situation, that will motivate people to be more helpful in a particular area. So, you know, I remember hearing a number of the stories and saying, oh, now I get why they started that charity, or I get why they volunteer or run that organization, because it's personal. Like all of it's personal.
It's that top part. Oh, well, you know, you said personal. I mean, I think about Dr. Lynette Henry, who is phenomenal. She's got 20, 30 years into the educational system. She has turned, I don't know how many schools around. She's now running Educate Fairfax, which is the philanthropic arm of schools. Yeah, in Virginia.
Both my husband and I, husband of 34 years married.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We were in education, and we see education pretty much like a mission field for us, right? That's where our calling is. And we wanted to come here to America because we wanted to further our studies and also, you know, continue our professional development. But, you know, we come from a country where, you know, rigor and community are two things that come together. And so coming here was another opportunity to kind of do transformation at a scale. By coming here and being educated and really understanding systems and how they work, gave me the opportunity really to be able to do this work at a higher level.
And she talks about, you know, how she comes from Barbados and education was so important to her and her husband. They wanted something better. They came to the United States with 2 suitcases and $200.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So they relied on other people actually in the Tampa Bay area before they moved up north to open up their, you know, arms, houses, wallets to help them. And then she, in turn, quickly started, you know, helping other schools with kids in need. And it's like, you think about, that's her why. Yeah. Is that she
lived it.
She lived it. She received help.
I totally agree. I love her.
I think it's important to note that when we were researching doing this podcast, we kind of brainstormed what we thought were the different pillars, right, of poverty that a kid has to overcome or that we wanted to look at.
Yeah.
Right.
All the things that impacted it the most.
Right. Like the obstacles, the barriers. And just reading them off real quick, it was banking and finance, the business of living, which we call like housing, transportation, things like that, just things that you need, technology to get to live, careers and employment, the educational system, government and social impact, and health in the family. It's pretty wide. I mean, those are endless topics.
Absolutely.
So again, we were able to hit a few of these, but some of them we haven't even gotten to explore yet. But just thinking about a couple of the key themes that we did uncover a little bit. Early on, we had Thomas Feint, CEO of Grow Financial Federal Credit Union.
Yeah.
Real issue here. And again, I go back to this idea of financial literacy and education, understanding what happens when you make a late payment. What's the additional cost that you will have to pay now because you missed a payment and your interest rate on that credit card just went from 21% to 40%.
Thomas, I got to stop you right there. You said 30 to 40%?
Yeah, that's the term is a penalty APR. So you miss a payment and a bank has an opportunity to escalate your interest rate to almost close to 40%.
And he was amazing. And we talked to him about, you know, what's the difference between a credit union and a bank, and how a lot of times the credit unions are really built to be more community oriented, especially for you know, more financially disadvantaged families.
And so you think of the usury laws in the United States and you think, oh, there's a cap on how much they can charge you, except for in the fine print of many of the contracts of these credit cards or loans are these triggers. So if you miss a payment, it's super highly penalizing people that couldn't afford the 21% in the first place. And so when you hear that and you realize that banks need to make money, and we understand that, but when you hear that the penalties for people that are already kind of working check to check or living very tight under that Alice data that we talked about, how crippling that missing one payment can be. And that's where you start thinking about, that's one aspect of the financial system that impacts it. I know you and I've talked is, you know, if you're poor, it's more expensive to have a bank account. It's more expensive to get debt. And again, you can understand the bank's perspective, like they've got more risk. but it feels like we got to be able to do other things to help people along, because this is why CJ and Kelly are saying that in Atlanta, only 4% people make it out of poverty. If you look at the stats nationally, they're very similar. And it's because all of the systems like banking and healthcare and other things have these obstacles that are built in. And so it's overcoming those things. And so I think having folks like Thomas on to educate us, what I'd like to see for 26 is how do we get people on to help figure out ways to solve these problems, whether that's lobbying the governments to change some of the laws around this, or whether it's helping people create business models that have some shared risk in it so that we don't have to have 40% interest rates for people that miss a payment or two. It makes a ton of sense. And I hope we tap more into the financial literacy piece of it, because we can't just give people opportunities. We got to make it easier for them to hold on to that money and have a sustainable life, not just episodic moments outside of poverty. We want them to sustain a life outside of poverty. And that comes with education and financial literacy for sure. You know, the other cool one, and I'm sorry, you just made me think and I'm excited, is when we talked about the financial aid.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Oh, cool.
Nadine.
Yeah, Nadine.
What piece of advice would you offer to a student and their family about starting the process of thinking about going to school after high school and what that looks like?
It's probably not one piece, but it's doable. So don't be discouraged. Apply early and ask questions. And then the one thing I forgot to mention are scholarships. So external scholarships, year over year, there's millions of dollars left on the table because people do not apply, because they just assume I'm not going to get it, so why apply?
For some people, that may have been a boring episode. Like, oh my gosh, we're talking about how to apply for financial aid. Anytime this topic comes up when I'm with kids or teachers or universities, it is a super complex process. Most people are unaware of all the different scholarships and financial aid that's out there. And then once you know it's out there, it's so hard to apply that a lot of people give up before they get there. I thought, Nadine, like if you have a kid that wants to go to school and apply for financial aid, you have to go back and listen to that episode.
You do.
Because Nadine was amazing. She simplified it.
She's so good. And well, she's such a good and wonderful person anyway, but she's the FAFSA whisperer.
Yeah.
She really is. I mean, that is her true passion, is helping people navigate student aid. One of the things that she shared, and I may get this wrong off the top of my head, but I believe it's something like over 80% of American students. So this would be the first semester of their first year of college, I believe, or some sort of higher ed. Almost over 80% of students have some form of student aid. So this is the huge...
Yeah, it affects everybody, even beyond the population of the podcast itself.
Yeah, it is
100%. 100% agree. Light bulb that went off for me is the FAFSA, the financial aid process, is the form lots of people use for scholarships. Awesome. And so once you're good at that, then either you can use that, a lot of times they'll accept that, or it's a trimmed down version of that. So learning how to do that not only helps you with financial aid from the government, but it also helps you with the scholarships. And that's a little tricky thing that kind of we learned as well.
Absolutely. Along the same lines of financial aid and scholarships, we did a couple episodes at your alma mater and my alma mater, Florida State. Yes. And they were gracious. They opened up their doors to us to have conversations. But we talked to two incredible people. We talked to Dr. Deontay Brown, who leads among other things, the CARE program. We also got to talk to the dean of the College of Business, Dr. Mike Hartline.
Aunts or uncles maybe that were, maybe they were investment bankers or they were CPAs. They tend to not come from those backgrounds. So they never witnessed it. So how do you even mimic behavior that you've never witnessed? So we have to be able to demonstrate to them, yes, you can get from A to B, and here's how you do it. And oh, by the way, here are alumni who have been where you are. That's really powerful, by the way, is when you, like, it's enough one thing for the dean to say something or the faculty to say something. You bring in alumni who've been in that chair where they sit and say, I used to be just like you sitting in that chair, and here's what I did. And I came from practically nothing. I'm first gen myself. And when you see the students, the eyes light up because here's someone who did what they now aspire to do.
Those were really neat episodes, specifically around talk to us about first gen students. And when we say first gen, we're talking about first generation college students. So we had a couple episodes just entirely dedicated to that.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I did go to FSU. I was a first gen student there. And so the program's near and dear to my heart. I love that program. I believe, not just because it's our alma mater, that FSU is ahead of the game in terms of the sophistication of the program, how much they care for our first gen students, the programs around it, how they help them through the process of graduating. The thing, besides the loving and the care and the depth of the program, the stat that blew me away was that 87% of first gen students at FSU graduate. That is more than 10% higher than all students. And it's certainly higher if you go out and look at your, whatever somebody's listening to, whatever their alma mater is, whatever that university is, there's a probably 99% chance, 87% is higher than the student population graduation rate. And so when you think about, wow, so they're getting these students, they're putting these services around them, and they're graduating at a much higher rate than the rest of the population, that's a program that's working. That's a program that's kind of helping kids that don't have parents that have gone to college, friends that have gone to college. They don't have resources. And just by putting resources around them, you're seeing a higher success rate, which is the exact thing all of our partner companies in Think Big that hire our kids tell us. The kids that they hire that come from a first gen background, or they come from a financial disadvantaged background, work really hard to prove themselves. And they perform at a higher level than a lot of the kids that come through a more traditional background.
One more thing I wanted to talk to you about, I mean, because we could go on and on and on, is we had kind of a different approach when we interviewed Mike Batt with the Fairfax County Economic Development Authority. So that's a great partnership. So to clarify, they are a strategic partner of Think Big for Kids. So they have been just phenomenal in bringing Think Big programming in, connecting us with their companies, and then also, of course, Fairfax County schools, which is how we're serving our kids up there. You know, nonprofit work in with business. Like, what benefit does that have?
It's critical that our companies engage in the communities where they live and work, where their employees live and work, to the schools. I didn't know this until I joined the Economic Development Authority, but over 50% of the revenue, the tax base for this county, and most of them around the country, but over 50% of our tax revenue goes to the schools,
Really?
to Fairfax County Public Schools. And so I've heard our chairman say it many times, is we will invest $250,000 approximately for a student that go through our school systems from kindergarten through 12th grade. We want to keep them here to take advantage of all these amazing careers and this community where we all live. So that's why it's really important for our companies to engage with nonprofits in certain areas, and Think Big for Kids with all of their pillars, and starting out where we started with the career showcases is just a perfect fit for our companies and for what we're doing to bring our companies together with the school system.
I think it's a very unique model where you have a non-for-profit like Think Big that's focused on breaking the cycle of poverty. And then you have an economic development organization and leaders that recognize they need these students to be part of the economic fabric of the DC, Fairfax, Virginia area. Mm-hmm. And so I'd call them pretty innovative in our partnership, and it's working. They bought the Fairfax school system, and Dr. Michelle Reed to the table and formed this partnership that has kicked off our programs there, an awareness around, they had a very high level of poverty in that area, and they have a high shortage of workers there. So we're developing the next gen of workers. So it benefits the Fairfax Economic Development Organization, and it also benefits the school systems as well. So it's really a beautiful partnership. And frankly, the big thing is it can be replicated anywhere. So Jenny, let me turn the tables on you.
Oh boy.
Because you're asking me all the questions, and you, by the way, I think you've had a great 24 episodes. I know you were a little reluctant to be the
host and
interviewer, but I think you were amazing. My question is, what What's different next? What's going to be different in 26?
Oh, well, I was going to ask you the same
Oh,
thing.
yeah, come on. This is on.
Bigger, because we always think bigger, right? Think bigger voices. I want success stories. I want people on here like yourself who, had a pretty tough, challenging, childhood, but you've gone on to do really great things. I think it's so important for people to hear success stories. I think it resonates with people. I'd love to hear more success stories. I have been really kind of blown away by how people have reached out to us from throughout the country, not just in the areas where we live.
Yeah.
Like where we go because of our programming at Think Big, but I've had people reach out from Seattle, from Nashville, Baltimore, saying, hey, I want to come on and talk. That's great. I want to talk to more authors and just anybody who has a good point of view or a success story. So I just want to do more.
Love it.
I think the other thing we want to do is really grow our audience. You do a podcast, it's hard. Unless you're, a celebrity, you have to really gain the footing, gain the traction. So we're really looking to really expand awareness in the next year.
Yeah, I think we have a couple thousand, maybe 3,000 people that are watching, which is great. But we were thinking millions. So we really need the people listening to get their friends hooked on this and forward, whether it's on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or wherever we're posting, get them to be aware of this. And people always ask me, like, how do you get involved, especially younger people? And I'm like, well, it's got to be personal. Like, you have to feel it. Otherwise, it won't sustain. And so you have to just figure out what's meaningful to you. And part of it's just exploring a little bit, get involved with different organizations, volunteer your time a little bit, especially when you're in your teens and 20s and even early 30s until something clicks. And then you're like, oh, that's the organization. Because it's more likely that you'll connect and do something when you fall in love with it. And you won't fall in love with it unless you have a couple dates. And so I think I'd like to see that our show has that kind of impact on volunteers across the country.
That's great. That would be amazing. And I think we can do it.
I think so too.
Tony, thanks for taking the time to come back, talking with me. And we know that you're behind the scenes with a lot of this, but now we get to hear your input and feedback, and it's greatly appreciated.
I'm excited about 26, Jenny. I love what we're doing, so let's keep it up.
Me too. Stay tuned.
All right.
Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for spending your time with Think Bigger Voices. Visit thinkbigforkids.org/podcast to see more episodes, follow our journey, and stay connected.